Joy to the world, the Lord has come. That is, my friends, the basis on which I can say to you, Happy New Year, Happy 2021. And you might think, I don't know how I'm going to be happy this year. 2020 was difficult in many ways, but it's the presence of God in our lives that helps us to find joy. And it's the gospel that tells us that Jesus is the light that has come into darkness. The people in darkness have seen a great light. So as we look forward with Sidewalk, Skyline podcast, I want to just continually bring back episodes to you and interviews that will give us reasons to be hopeful, reasons to see that God has never stopped working in the midst of circumstances that we don't understand. God is still with us. God is still doing some incredible things, and he's doing incredible things in Canadian cities. So we had a contest on our Facebook page, and I asked you, the listeners, if you would consider looking at that list of our 2020 episodes, and from those to pick the 3 that you think were the top 3 most listened to episodes. And then if you were able to guess the top 3 in sequence, I was going to double the reward. Well, unfortunately, none of you had the gift of prophecy and were able to determine which were the top 3. Some of you came close, you guessed 2 out of 3, but that isn't what the contest asked for. So the 2020 most listened to episodes. You ready for this? The 3rd most listened to episode was 6 Degrees of Separation from Chris Chase. That was our number 3 most listened to episode. Our number 2 most listened episode was Gangland preacher Mark Goring. And Mark, on one of our episodes when he spoke at our city conference in 2019, shared some of his story. And that was number 2 most listened. The number 1 most listened, drum roll please, from Street Kid to Street Chaplain, the Adam White interview. Well, I'm glad that I've been able to be a part of exposing you and giving you the opportunity to hear so many great stories of people in Canada, in urban centers, doing spectacular things. And so as we start off today, January 1st, 2021, I'm going to feature an interview that I recorded during pandemic shutdown times during 2020. I recorded my interview with Mark Griffin. And Mark is currently director of Christians Against Poverty, but he's spent many years pastoring, being in missions, being a district youth director, many things that Mark has done. And I know that he is well known from coast to coast and even around the world in some settings. So without prolonging it anymore, I want to take you now to our interview with Mark Griffin. Mark Griffin, I was trying to remember, when did we first meet?
I thought of it this morning.
Did you?
Yeah, and I won't tell you where I thought of it because then it just gets awkward.
Okay.
But I was thinking, Kevin Rogers, when did I meet Kevin? So you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
I was doing promotional photography for CKCU-FM out of Ottawa for a David Meese concert in Peterborough. And you were the warm-up gig. Not Two Fish, but just you all by yourself. And I'd heard of you, Kevin Rogers is coming back. Ooh, it was like this mystical thing. Kevin Rogers is coming back to Peterborough. And everybody was just all impressed and excited. And I was like, who's Kevin? Who is this man like unto one of the gods? But it was just you.
It was just me. I don't even remember me.
Yeah, but I took some pictures of you, and you came up to me after and said, hey, you're doing photography. If you got any good shots, I could use them, but I didn't honestly have any good shots.
Well, the subject material that you had to shoot made it difficult.
No, it was just I was that bad at photography. I was used to fully automated, and somebody had loaned me a camera and said, go take some pictures, and I destroyed the evening. But hey, I got into it.
Opening for David Meese. Was that at, what was it? Was that Jubilee?
Yeah, I believe that's the name of it.
That charismatic church.
Yeah, it was
just
some
outside
church,
Peterborough.
It was some church that looked like Art Deco had collided with crack cocaine, and they produced a building. Can I say that on a podcast?
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
can
sure.
say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
some of our listeners will know what you're talking.
Yeah, I remember driving up to the building thinking, "Oh, I know this decorating style. This is early ugly, is what that is." This is the most hideous building. But then I got to meet you, so it was a very fruitful night, and
wow.
And I always appreciated David Meese, and he was just a lovely brother, and just it was nice to get to me. So this is the first I'd met you. Probably the last time I got to be with David Meese. Like, we don't hang out a lot, but
no.
But again, he was a great writer and really nice man. So it was a delightful evening for me. I thought it was a double win. Sorry about your luck, Kevin.
That had to have been in the early 80s.
Yeah, I'd say I would guess the fall of 83.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, or early 84.
Yeah.
So,
and then I remember knowing of your dad, who was pastoring, what was that town he was in up in Eastern Ontario there?
Frankfurt,
yes.
Yeah.
And I believe I was living in Belleville at the time.
Did you gig with him at all? Like,
with your dad?
Yeah, he plays a mean ham in B3 with Leslie Speaker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
My dad's like he's a rock and roll maniac.
He is?
Well, he plays the organ.
There's a funny story I remember about
Here we go.
Your mom.
Here we go. Careful, she's with Jesus now. Careful.
Okay, well then she can do the fact checking on this thing. Your parents were living somewhere in the GTA in their retirement years, and they were in some kind of condo. And there was some kind of condo association get together.
Okay.
And there was a beer story. Do you remember it?
No.
No?
I don't remember a beer story. They were in property management. Before they retired permanently.
Okay, so there was whether they had to pick up the beer for the condo association.
Hide the beer, the pastor's here.
Yeah, I don't think they were ever drinkers that I'm aware of.
No,
they were good old Pentecostals.
Oh, as Pentecostals can be.
They were as holy as you could be, which...
They even had alcohol-free rubbing alcohol. Like, they were that Pentecostal. Yeah.
But your mom was asked about getting the beer, and she asked if there was what was it again? She's supposed to get Labatt's, or was it Labatt's Blue? And she said something about and should I get a Blue Light, which at that time was funny because that didn't exist, but it was just kind of an awkward thing that she said that was funny, that revealed her complete lack of knowledge of alcohol at that time.
But it was prophetic beer.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the mingling of the worlds, the Pentecostal and the alcohol world.
That's right. That's right.
It's beautiful. And my mom, she had that leading of the Spirit.
She did, didn't she?
Yeah.
And so she saw it coming, and it makes sense, that.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Well, anyways, so then I remember Well, before we get too far down memory lane, because that gets kind of shady and foggy,
Very
and
muddy.
and then the fact checkers are going to go crazy because we're going to get it wrong. So instead of going down that lane, why don't we go down your lane and talk to me a little bit about the long rabbit trail of global leading of the Spirit in your life, all the places that you've been and lived and capacities that you've been serving the Lord in. So
Wow.
take us back.
Wow.
Preacher's kid.
Yeah, born and raised in the church,
Yeah.
and lots of delightful experiences as a preacher's kid, but, as a PK. Speaking of, I knew your dad for years growing up and just always had a lot of respect for Don Rogers. But yeah, both of my grandpas were also Pentecostal ministers and both church planters. And Grandpa Griffin was a Bible school teacher. Grandpa Gresco planted a church here in the city of Hamilton. And is that okay to be geographic specific to the podcast? That's okay.
We are, as you and I are talking, we are in downtown Hamilton.
Yeah, well, you are. I'm having a transcendental meditation experience right now.
You're
I'm
in the wormhole.
I'm actually in Pittsburgh right now. Yeah, just for our
Welcome
clarifications.
back. Welcome back to our
Good
show.
to have you back, Mark. Yeah, so I grew up with all this Pentecostalism and just a wonderful church background, and very thankful for that. And then right out of Bible school, I went to Frankfurt, Ontario to work with my dad for a year and a bit. And then I got married and pastored with Bill Bond as his youth pastor up in Barrie, Ontario, and had 3 wonderful years with him before I went to our denominational office in Burlington to be the campus ministries director. That was just a wonderful faith experience because we only had budget for a year for my salary.
Right.
And when that ran out...
Was that the youth ministries?
Yeah, worked for Jamie Stewart in the youth ministries department.
Yeah.
And then from there I went down to be with George Carroll in Windsor.
Yes.
So that's my
that was
earliest...
another one of our connect points.
Yeah, Windsor connections. And you were just about to come into Windsor to do New Song and plant that brilliant church.
Yeah.
And we had lots of connections because we lived on Central, and of course that's just a block or two from Drouillard. And so, that's what we could afford starting out as a young family. And lots of great connections in Windsor, both with George Carroll, but the church there, still lots of friends to this day. And then I got voted in to the youth ministries position and did that for 7 years out of the district office as well. So back in the Burlington, Hamilton area. And
hang on. Did you say you worked prior to Windsor at district?
Yeah, that was just a 1-year gig.
And that was doing
campus ministries.
Oh, campus ministries.
Specifically, yeah.
And in campus ministries at that time, was that like high school?
Yeah, just focusing on high school outreach and whatever we could do to get into high school campuses in an evangelistic way.
Okay, then to Windsor for a few years at Parkwood, and then back to district as the youth ministries director.
Yeah, so that was 7 years, and that took me up to the year 2000. And after that season, that's when we really started to dabble in missions. Like we'd loved pastoring, we'd loved youth work, but we'd always had a heart for missions. So we pioneered the Canadian office of Next Level International. It had been going a bit, and it used to be called Youth Ministries International out of the UK. But we gave them a little more of a Canadian presence, and I was their first full-time. Everybody else had been part-time, dabbling. Yeah. But I went for that for 2 and a bit years. And in the process of looking for a home church, we started attending Lake Mount Worship Center in Grimsby. And we wanted Terry Bone to be our pastor because he's just a brilliant teacher. Oh, yeah. Great man. And but then I'd only been there 2 months and was part-time staff there while I worked towards my mission support, and he resigned. And I said, Terry, what happens if the next guy comes along and he's a complete idiot? So sure
Which
enough,
can happen.
yeah, and that idiot ended up being me.
Well, there you go.
Church came after me to be the lead pastor, and so that was my first experience senior pastoring, and God did some really neat things.
Yep.
And we went from being that was a full-on renewal church in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And as that renewal season kind of came and went, that's when I was coming in. And to be honest with you, a lot of the renewal stuff had become renewal form. You know, just that's how people did it, but not saying God was necessarily still in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to, I mean, I think there's a lot of wonderful things happened in renewal.
Yeah.
But how I articulate it is that went from being a renewal church to a renewed church. Kind of that whole metaphor of new wineskin. So that was almost 7 years I was there, and God did great things. The church grew financially, numerically, started working towards a new facility. But in my heart, Kevin, I had nothing in my heart about building a new building.
Right.
That's just not my skill set. Kind of know your limit, stay within it. But the church needed to do something. 2 services was getting a little old. And so I walked away from that. I itinerated for a bit, and then we ended up again in the mission field. And we went to Germany from 2010 to 14. And again, God surprised us, and we acquired a facility to train leaders and church planters, and we bought a hotel, a former 23-bedroom guest house, and commercial kitchen and restaurant, and we converted all that into being a training center, just about an hour northeast of Frankfurt. So we have no German roots or language or nothing. We just felt that's what God wanted us to do. And Kevin, craziest thing, my wife called me, I was back in Canada. I won't go into the details of how I was working in Calgary part-time while we were support raising, but that's another long story for another day. But the Lord did something neat. My wife calls me and she said, Mark, all my socks are filled with holes. Can you send me some money? Can you send me some money in the bank to get some socks? I said, honey, I just paid all the bills and literally we have nothing at least for a week. And I said, can you return some bottles to maybe go buy, like, what do you need? She goes, oh, just like 5 or 10 euros. I said, you're going to have to do a bottle return and take all the bottles down to the grocery store and come up with 5 or 10 euros and go buy yourself some socks. I'm sorry, hon, I got nothing. Like, the budget's that tight. And she said, okay. Well, it was that same week my wife was, I don't know what she was doing, but the Lord dropped this idea into her heart that she should start looking for a property. And she's like, I don't even have money for socks. How can I go looking for a property? And she heard it very clearly, like, go looking for a property. So she starts scanning the internet for something that could be a leadership training center, and the things she keeps seeing are guest houses. So long story short, a year later, with no budget, we had acquired a property, paid for everything, the cost of the property, closing costs, taxes, all the registration fees, and done it in German, which neither of us spoke any German. So we secured a lawyer, we secured everything. And POC, our covering denomination, was incredibly helpful in that process. And of course, David Boyd is very linguistically gifted. He was very helpful and encouraging. So we were there 4 years, and we'd never planned on buying a building, but the Lord dropped that in my wife's heart. And she's like, okay. We ended up looking at 40 properties. So the realtor's asking us, what kind of price range you looking at? And we're like, oh, yeah, I don't know, $250,000, 300,000, somewhere. Like when you have absolutely
10 million.
Yeah. When you have absolutely nothing, it's all a step of faith.
Yeah.
But sure enough, within I'm going to say just a couple weeks of closing, we pitched the idea to our covering church back in Canada. They paid for the whole thing. And we were just like, this is a God moment. Like, again, from not having money to buy socks to having this ministry center. And it's still going to this day. Marcus and Liz Brandt are now POC missionaries running Das Canada House. Yeah. And we're just, and just the acquisition of the thing was incredible how God worked that all out. And that was a highlight in our history, Kevin. We consider our time in Europe to have been just an incredible privilege that you never could have planned for. We had 2 of our kids graduated high school from a boarding school, missions boarding school in Germany. And so we came back to Canada, pastored out west in Calgary for a few years. And most recently, after looking for a job for a season, we found this opportunity at CAP Canada. So here we are back in Hamilton, a beloved sister city and a major part of both our family history and our personal history. So that's it.
It's interesting how place plays into the story of our lives, right? And you've had many places, and yet you're back to Hamilton, which is kind of coming home, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We love the city. My grandfather, my great grandfather, Orley Burgess Griffin, he used to own the general store in Waterdown, Ontario. Burnt to the ground. He took the insurance money, said to his wife, hey, good Methodist folks, maybe this is our opportunity to go drink in that Pentecostal revival we heard about. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Pasadena. You thought I was going to say Beverly, didn't you? But they moved to Pasadena and took in the Pentecostal revival. My great-grandfather was spirit-filled at the Azusa Street Mission.
No way.
And then shortly after that, he saw the Rose Bowl parade in Pasadena. And this was kind of as Azusa Street was winding down. And shortly after that, Amy Semple McPherson was going guns a-blazing at Angelus Temple. So Angelus Temple actually had a float in the Rose Bowl parade. And as it went by, the Lord just whispered into my great-grandpa's ear, go there, I want to meet your family. And he'd made a promise to his wife, we're not coming back to Canada until every one of our kids has experienced the outpouring of the Spirit. So the Lord dropped into his heart, go there and I'll meet with your entire family. So my grandpa was baptized in the Holy Spirit at Angelus Temple.
Wow.
And he told me stories as a young boy and a teenager, and particularly when I headed off to Bible school, he started to unpack some of his personal experience and how God met him profoundly at Angelus Temple and how it changed his life. And he came back here, I think he was 16 or 17 when they came back to Hamilton. And he would go preaching on the beaches of Dunnville. He'd go preaching downtown Brantford and was instrumental in planting churches here in this area before he finally went off to Bible school at the ripe old age of 18. Went out to Winnipeg to see, CBC, Central Bible College. And shortly after became a church planter in Sharbot Lake, Ontario, up in the Ottawa Valley area. So that was all based out of Hamilton here. And my great-grandfather, he bought another general store not far from here and started Pentecostal house meetings. And he had 30, 40, up to 50 people and just couldn't run the store and the church. So he brought in a young man, imagine this, a young man by the name of J.H. Blair, to run with the thing. And you'd personally know some of his story and how God used J.H. Blair. But so when I think of Hamilton, I think that's our town. That's where, we started churches.
Yeah.
And my grandpa on the other side, my mom's dad also planted a church here. But Yea, verily, I've digressed too much already, Kevin, to go into any more rabbit trail stories.
Well, the blessing of God, the investment that God makes in a person's life, is intended to carry on for generations, and that's true in your family story. That's also true as I trace my family story to see how that we got here through others, and the things that God deposits into us. We're kind of living off of the investment that was made by somebody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kevin, there's been times where I've ministered here in the city of Hamilton, and I walk away from it thinking, wow, that many people had a profound encounter with Jesus, or came to Jesus, or got healed, or like for me, those, not that I'm a number keeping guy, but if I were, like, those numbers go through the roof anytime I minister in Hamilton. And I realized, well, I prayed about the same amount I normally do. I studied about the same amount I normally do. I'm fairly consistent that way. But I would just say, wow, these results, this has nothing to do with me. And I just feel like there's a swell that comes behind me, a tidal wave that I just kind of ride in. And I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. Like, I'm just talking the way I normally talk, and all of a sudden somebody's crying. And I mean, I get that a lot when I talk. People just start crying, like, oh, what's he saying? This doesn't make any... But, not the usual lamenting.
The usual reasons.
Yeah. But just the touch of God will wash over people, and I'll be like, wow, I feel like I'm just sharing the way I normally share. And
just showing up.
And God does something, and some of it's related to family and the investment of prayer and energy. I don't know how all that works.
Well, I remember that about you, and we had you years ago come speak at New Song Church, and I just remember that about it was in the nature of your ministry that God would use you to trigger things in people, and to say things that just cut beneath the surface to something that God wanted to say to them. And
sure.
And you were the guy that sometimes he would use.
Yeah. Oddly enough, that's the Old Testament thing of Balaam's donkey.
Yes.
If God can speak through a donkey. Because, Kevin, I'm just a regular guy. And, like, when I say regular, I don't mean like as opposed to constipated. I just mean like I'm normal, a normal person. I don't have any airs about me. I just share from my heart. And but like you say, like there's that thing God is doing below the surface, and it's like I'll tell a story. I'm like, why would I usually tell those points, but I'm coming at the story from a totally different angle. Or I shared these verses before, but before verse 17 and 18 stood out, and now verse 11 and 12. And it's not that I'm that smart. It's just I believe those that are led of the Spirit are born of the Spirit. It's kind of a birthright thing. Not that I deserve that. It's just that the blessing and the favor of God. I'm sure you've seen this a zillion times over too. It's like, Lord, I don't know why I said it that way, but that seemed to really touch somebody, and I'm just thankful, and I try to be tender. And sometimes, I'm just a tough old goat, and I just plow and blunder, bull in a china shop kind of guy. But sometimes if you just open your heart to the Lord, He'll put little things, and you'll be praying, like you're just minding your own business, saying a prayer, and all of a sudden you find yourself quoting a verse, and then the person that you're praying for says, "How did you know that's like the most important verse in my life? And I was thinking of committing suicide, and I said, God, give me a sign." These crazy stories.
Yeah.
And you just know, well, where did that verse come from? Out of the blue, popping into my head. And if you just, I find the enemies of that, Kevin, if you're in a rush, you don't land on that stuff. Or if you're angry, or you have unresolved emotion, a lot of those times you'll miss those gentle thoughts and ideas. And that's when I become the bull in the china shop. But if I slow down, take my time. If I'm present, I'm in the moment. And I just listen to people, and I don't try to preach at them, but I just try to empathize and care for them. I'll hear things. And when I say hear, it's not like I get this major download. I just get these little gentle impressions, ideas, imaginations. I don't know how you would label it, but those can be game changers for people. And I've seen it happen so many times. I know it's not lucky. I know it's not coincidence, because if I prayed that same prayer that I prayed over person A, if I prayed that over person C, it would mean nothing to them.
Yeah, it's not a shtick. It's not just doing the same old. It's just being flexible and open, right?
Yeah. That, the John 3 verses, the wind blows wherever it pleases. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where it's going. And so it is with everyone born of the Spirit. So I don't feel like I have some corner on something or some special technique. I believe this is available to every single person. And you know what? You don't even have to be Pentecostal. Like I've met so many people that are even anti-Pentecostal, but they have this sweetness of God in their hearts because they've been born of the Spirit. Like it doesn't mean you've had some Pentecostal encounter. It just means you love Jesus, you're in touch with him, and the Spirit of God can do whatever he wants, however he wants. And like I said, he used Balaam's donkey. Maybe he could use me. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. And so that brings us up to your current career move or ministry move, whatever you want to call it.
Career.
Yeah. Wrong choice, not career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your current placement, Christians Against Poverty. Now, there's a saying, that people will say, Christians are always known for what they're against instead of what they're for. And but I think in this case, we got to make the exception and say, well, there is something that followers of Jesus are against about poverty. And I think that not everybody that is naming the name of Jesus necessarily thinks a whole lot about poverty, but I think we all think a lot about money. And there's we're talking about the Holy Spirit, but there's also another spirit, and spirit in the world that creates this entity of power called money. And then the poverty, whether that's a manifest spirit or it's just bad practices, or I don't know how to define it all. Maybe you've got some ideas on it, but what are we talking about when we say Christians Against Poverty? Define what you mean by poverty. What is that?
That's a great question. I think, Kevin, I take a position as just a state of not having, but something that goes with that is the fear of not getting more. There's a mentality, a poverty spirit of not just that I don't have in the actual position of poverty, but just the attitude that goes with it, which, again, I know wealthy people that have lots, but they have a poverty spirit, and they just hold on to it as tightly as they can.
Right.
Because they're afraid they're going to lose it or not get more, or the great gifts that they have to so closely steward them. It's like God's going to steal it away from them, or they're going to lose it somehow. And of course, we know from Scripture, generosity is the way of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so I think so much of it is just have and have not. It's I think we lose the beauty of the gospel message. Like when Jesus gets up, Luke 4, the Spirit of he unrolls the Isaiah scroll, right? The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is upon me. And the first thing he goes after, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. And that's Luke's bias. Like if you read through Luke's gospel, it's almost like, seems like God actually likes the poor better. And we know God is no respecter of persons, but there's this bias in Luke's gospel of they get to hear first.
Yeah.
The poor get set free because they've had a hard go. Blessed, not just are the poor in spirit, like Matthew's gospel, but Luke's, blessed are the poor. And it's a recurring theme. Like,
Right.
it's obvious there from
And then Luke also authors the book of Acts, where we see how the early church, which is filled with many poor people, and a handful that have a little bit, and how they respond to poverty, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You think of the miracle at I'm glad you mentioned the Acts connection and the Lucan authorship of both. And you think of this definitive moment, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have, I give you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk.
Yeah.
And it's this shift away from the group, the apostles, and this waiting in Jerusalem and this empowerment from on high. And it seems like something is almost forcibly through Christ fulfilled at this experience where it's, no, Jesus said this is why we're here. And here's this guy with financial need reaching out. And as, remember Carmen Lynn used to say, here's a guy looking for alms and he got legs. Good Carmen Lynn material right there. But it's a...
Was he from Joyzy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking for alms.
Yeah. But yeah, it's such a pivotal moment in the gospel where, it's not just for these select few, it's like it's getting out on the streets.
Yeah.
And to me, that mobilization, that actualization of the gospel message, it's like intrinsically woven, like it's hand in hand, the gospel message and loving people. And it's funny when Jesus offers the parable of, the farmer, the sower, he goes out, and some of the seed, it goes out on hard ground, stony ground, thorny ground. But then there's the good ground that receives the seed. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody that's disadvantaged financially is wide open to the gospel. But people that are hurting, people that are broken, and finance is probably the most glaringly obvious one. There's a desperation, both people that are sick and people that are disadvantaged. And to me, that's kind of the logical outflow of the gospel message, is that we look after the poor, the orphan, the widow. They're open, Kevin. It's such broken ground. And people will receive seed that maybe they wouldn't normally. And, people that are just middle class, going around their busyness of the day-to-day monotony of whatever rut they're in, they tend to fold their arms. If that works for you, great. It's not my shtick. It's not my thing. But hey, if you need God, whatever works for you.
Right.
But there's some of our clients, Kevin, they come to us as atheists or of a different religion, and we're not trying to ram Jesus down their throat, but unapologetically, we love them. We give groceries. It doesn't matter what your religious background affiliation is, your sexual orientation, your financial status. Doesn't matter. We love everybody the same, and just try to encourage them as they walk through these processes. And hopefully in there, they'll say, yeah, wow, I maybe had a bad experience, or I didn't believe in God at all, but I'm going to be open to this. This is a game changer for me.
I've heard the saying, maybe you've heard it too, that all poverty is an absence of relationship. And it sounds like with CAP, Christians Against Poverty, that you step into people's lives in a way that brings relationships specifically to the fallout of their poverty. And so give me the elevator pitch for CAP.
Sure.
Talk to me about CAP. And
Delighted to, yeah. We primarily do two things. I'll start, though, with our mission statement. We serve the poor with the church. Well, I'm doing a terrible job. Can you tell I'm new at this?
Well,
we serve the
just
poor.
be led of the Spirit, brother, and it'll make sense to somebody out there in Radio Land that's listening to this broadcast today.
We serve the poor. We reach the lost with the church across the nation. So how we serve the poor, we do something with the local church called debt centers. And a debt center is just any church that will open up and say, yeah, we want to reach the poor. And if I can digress on this before, and then I'll come right back to it. A lot of people think of the poor and they automatically think of the homeless. They think of mental illness is actually what they're thinking of that manifests in the form of homelessness. So a lot of people are terrified of the poor because they're thinking of somebody getting in their face that's,
right,
not from the same socioeconomic background as them and making them extremely uncomfortable. And that's huge. Like if you're like your situation being in downtown Windsor and you have homeless people right on your doorstep.
Yep.
And the numbers that I could go after, and like the closer you get to downtown, basically the higher all those negative and painful statistics.
Until downtown prospers, and then the poor got to shuffle.
Right, exactly. The truth is the poor are all around us. We just can't see it. Most Canadians identify with the homeless as being the poor, and they are. I'm not arguing that. But through things like divorce, extended seasons of sickness or unemployment, the poor are all around us, and they maybe used to be middle class, and they might still even own a home, but are so debt-laden, their net worth isn't such that they can just sell their home and, I'm fine, I can get an apartment and start over.
Right.
We're talking people that are $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 in debt, and they only have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of equity in their home. It's a net worth question of they're below zero. And some of those are just because, been unemployed for 6 months, a year, things just went, or again, a medical condition, a lot of time in the hospital, a lot of time without income. Kevin, like anybody that's listening to this, like within a couple 100 meters of your workplace or your church or your home, there are literally hundreds of people that are in poverty.
Yep.
Pre-COVID, 46% of Canadians in any given month were only $200 away from bankruptcy. So, what that tells us is moving into the fall, we're going to see record numbers of insolvencies in Canada.
Yeah.
And I've talked to trustees in the industry, insolvency trustees, bankruptcy lawyers. Kevin, I'm believing things are going to turn around and it's going to be good, and our downtowns are going to turn around and business is going to come back. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of hurting people all around us. So when I say we work with the poor, if a church opens a debt center, all that means is they welcome people that are struggling with great amounts of debt, and we offer a debt counseling service to help people get out of debt. Again, we don't just say, hey, here's a magic wand, here's the money, you're out of debt. Woo! No, we actually just empower people to get out of debt themselves, help them budget.
So let's cast a scenario here. I'm in a double income home. We've got kids in public school and high school. We neither of us are making enormous dollars, but should have enough money to be able to at least survive and live. But we've had to refinance our our debts at the bank a couple, 3 times. You know, we've got a line of credit. But we have this sense of responsibility that we should pay our debts, but we've accumulated a debt load that on paper we'll be 90 years old paying off the debts that we've accumulated as a young couple in our 30s or 40s. So you know, do we just ignore it and just say, well, we just have to keep paying the bills and, you know, just hope that we win the lottery, you know, but it's getting to there comes a point where it's getting critical now, and I don't know if we're going to be able to pay off that debt. We could get into real trouble real fast.
Yeah.
So now I hear about a church that has a debt center. Okay, so how do I hear about that? And what is a debt center? And what is the debt center going to do for me and my house?
Sure. I'm going to talk about the other thing Cap Canada does then.
Okay.
For that specific scenario.
Or do you want to come back to that?
Nah, we're on a roll.
Okay.
That's a great question because I think that touches a lot of people.
Yeah.
Another thing we do is cap money courses. So maybe a church doesn't have a full-on debt center, but they've heard of a church in town that's doing the cap money course, which is a simple stewardship program and training. We don't do that. We just train people from the local church, whether it's a pastor or just somebody that's a good communicator, has a heart for it. They can come to our office or get training virtually online. We're offering that right now for free, Kevin, because Canada really needs cap money.
Yeah.
It's a stewardship course, and it helps people budget. And in a situation like the one you've just described, if somebody were to sit through the cap money course, as they're doing the basic budget, which is a part of the course, they would realize, wow, our income every month is $4,000 or $5,000 in our home, but we're spending $6,000.
Yeah.
No wonder we're coming up short. No wonder our line of credit is increasing. And even when I get the occasional bonus at work, we're still falling behind. So Cap Money just teaches stewardship, and it helps, and it's a way to introduce Cap Canada to the local church. And ideally what happens is if somebody was in the situation you described, as they're going through the course, they have an option to hit a button on their laptop or that's called Cap Money Plus to say, help,
Yeah.
I'm swimming, I'm drowning actually, I'm not swimming anymore.
Yeah.
And we could then bring them into a situation where they get the credit counseling they need or debt management that they need. That's a significant part of what we do. And a lot of churches teach Cap Money, but then the second phase or the more significant ongoing systemic way we really help Canadians is when they come to a church that offers a debt center. So they've come into partnership with us. Again, we train their leaders. We don't do the work on the ground. We just help them set it up. And a local church, as they come into this commitment to be a debt center, they learn how to reach out and love people that are going through these kind of exact situations. And especially where it's pretty blatant poverty, where again, it's a single dad or a single mom, income isn't there, just struggling to put groceries on the table, and the food bank helps. But at the end of the day, the best they're doing is status quo. Well, we empower people with a debt management plan, not just to say, hey, you got $15,000 of debt, we're going to write you a check. No, that's not what we do. We actually go into their homes, befriend them, build relationship with them, and say, describe your financial visit to, we get all the financial details. That part comes back to our office where we have certified credit counselors. They formulate a plan, a budget that we take back to those individuals. Again, go into their home and say, here's what your new budget would look like. And it's not just, hey, here's how you can pay back $15,000. We'll actually step in. And again, we have certified people in our office that can talk to creditors. And that $15,000 of debt, as with any other debt or credit counseling agency in Canada, that $15,000 can quickly be cut in half or cut substantially.
So that'd be a consumer proposal?
Very similar. That's one of the options, yes. And through consumer proposal or a full-on debt management plan, a DMP, we can go to the creditors. They work with us because we have history with them, and we pay off that debt. They pay off the debt. We just journey with them. They pay us. What separates us from other debt management plans or credit counselors in Canada, other credit counseling agencies will take usually 22.5% of that amount that's being paid back, and that's how they'll run their business.
Okay.
Because we're a nonprofit, and there's lots of other nonprofits in Canada, we do those home visits, we pitch the plan, and we don't take a cent from our clients. So for some of the clients who think, I can't really afford bankruptcy because that costs $1,500 in Canada.
Right.
For some of those, we can, not for everyone, but for some, we offer free insolvencies, and we'll journey. But for those that can almost pay it back, but not quite, the difference of that 20% helps us cater to Canada's most disadvantaged people. They want to get out of debt. They want to do it themselves. They're motivated, but they're going to come up short. So for them, we offer it for free. But this is the beauty of it,
That's
Kevin.
fantastic.
The church comes alongside and says, wow, for you to do this, for you to come up with $500 a month and pay your rent and pay all your normal expenses, but get out of debt in 2 years, that's going to be a tough one. Guess what? We're here for you.
Yeah.
Here, it's our first visit. Guess what? We brought along a few bags of groceries just to help you out. Can we just have a peek in your cupboard, see how you're doing? Okay, we're going to have a team here next week just to stock this from our food pantry.
Give people some hope.
Yeah, give them some hope. But Kevin, not just talk hope.
Yeah.
We're showing up. And this is what our local churches do. Heroic things. Like even during COVID, there's papers to sign. Oh, it's okay. I'll come to your place. I know you're worried. We'll have the documents in plastic bags. I'll put them on the hood of your car. You can sign them when you're done. Just step away. We'll take the papers. We'll set this up with your creditor. We have to get the actual signatures. And people, Kevin, showing up to love people. We have some other little funds. If people have a broken down car or their washing machine breaks down, we have something called the Smile Fund. So we don't give away cash, but hey, we'll maybe fix your washer, get you some emergency dentistry. And as you've journeyed with people, if they're really tight financially, it's stuff like that that can sink them.
Oh, yeah.
But if we can get them a weekend away with babysitting, when they're pulling their hair out because, I have dentistry, my face is killing me, I need help. That's okay. We'll cover the dentistry. Just, not every time, but we're going to do it this time.
Yeah.
And you and your husband have been going through
Somebody
it.
give me a break.
Yeah. Why don't you go away? We'll watch the kid. Like heroic stuff that our partner churches with debt centers have been doing. Kevin, I talk to some of these people and I think, my goodness, I'm thankful for my organization, but you people are heroes. Like this is what Jesus came for, was to make a difference. And Kevin, I've seen so many people. I'm going to digress. The elevator is so stuck right now in terms of my elevator pitch. But I think of a guy, I'll call him Ron, but here in the Hamilton area, actually. And when Ron first came to us, he made it very clear, I don't go for this Christian stuff. Thanks for your help with the debt, but I don't believe in this Jesus stuff. But first visit, Ron, can we pray with you? Yeah, sure, if you want. Suit yourself, and that's fine, but I don't believe that garbage.
Yeah.
Well, they prayed for Ron. They just kept loving Ron, kept bringing him groceries. And a few months later, as COVID hits, Ron is in a desperate situation. Some money has disappeared from his bank. He doesn't know where it is. He calls us and says, can you guys pray for me? What? Ron, I thought you didn't believe in God. Yeah, I know, but something's really gone wrong here. You got to help me. So, because we have relationship with the banks and the creditors, we call on Ron's behalf, and the money that's missing out of his bank account, it gets found. Things are paid on time that day. Everything works out. Ron calls us back in the afternoon. See, prayer works. It works, you guys. I'm thinking, I thought Ron was an atheist, but something's kind of shifted in his heart because, again, we're not just talking. We're trying to be there for Ron. So Ron gets invited out to the little Bible study. It's one of these alpha courses going on, and Ron makes it very clear. I still don't believe in God, but really like the food, really good food at Alpha. I'm going to come and I'm only coming for the food, but that's the journey, right?
Yeah,
We're just hanging out with Ron. We're loving Ron, and
no force. It's just invitation and come along if you want.
And that's kind of our message. Like we're unapologetically Christian by name, Christians, but we're taking a stand against poverty, and it doesn't necessarily look like homelessness or addiction, but
we're gonna in the show notes for this episode when it airs, we'll include links to Christians Against Poverty and ways that people get in touch with your organization, and because I think this is such a great opportunity for churches that find themselves surrounded by poverty. You know, to say, well, here's a way we can do it. And sometimes our imagination is limited and we think, oh, all these poor people, we better have a canned food drive and have a closet at the church where they can come and get our kidney beans, you know, or maybe we need to do a soup kitchen or, you know, and all those things are good. Yeah. But what you're talking about is that whole adage about not giving a man a fish, but teaching him how to fish, teaching people how to manage what they have. What I'd like you to do, though, is talk to me a little bit about some of the psychosis around money. Talk to me about the psychology of hopelessness that sometimes attaches itself to people when it comes to the pressures that money has brought into their life, and what are you seeing there? You know, is this more like is everybody who's in debt because you know they should have learned to be wise with their money when they were a kid and keep those practices, and you know is that all it is, or you know, like what's going on, and then what does a person's success or failure with money do to their spirit? What are you seeing there?
I'm thinking of that song from, I'm going to say early 90s, Bruce Hornsby and the Range. Man in the silk suit hurries by and catches the poor old lady's eye and just for fun he says, "Get a job." And I think a lot of our understanding as middle class church people is, oh, that's just bad budgeting, that's just irresponsibility, and I think that's the bias. Like right now we're in a season where, you know, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, we're trying to be so sensitive. Well, this is a bias we don't usually pick on.
It's an elephant in the room.
Yeah. The poor are among us. And when Jesus said, the poor you'll always have with you, it wasn't ammunition for just blow it off, keep having fun, keep being middle class. Like when Jesus said the poor you'll always have with you, he's saying,
you got a job to do.
Yeah. You get busy.
Yeah.
And, I want to be the first to say I've really had to overcome my bias of get a job, and the cruelty. That's as harsh and as narrow-minded, I think, as I could possibly be as a church person. And so much of that, as I mentioned earlier, is reinforced with my bias of homelessness and mental illness and inner city. Like Kevin,
We can even read all the scriptures with that bias.
absolutely.
Yeah, and miss what Jesus actually said and did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who wept over the city of Jerusalem with all its rich and poor. Like there's no Jesus only loves the rich or the middle class or he loves unconditionally. Obviously, this is so Kingdom 101. But those really, really hurting, really truly disadvantaged, again, by sickness, by unemployment, by marital status, and all the negativity that goes with that. There's a huge, I mean, statistically, I won't bore you with specific numbers, partly because I don't have them memorized, but you can imagine the rates of depression, self-harm, and even suicide go through the roof as people are pressured economically with greater and longer seasons of unemployment. And even now, as we're in COVID especially, people who have maybe never thought of suicide before, maybe who are listening to my voice right now, but have never thought of moving their car into the oncoming lane of traffic before this month or just in the last month or 2 or 3 because they're so in trouble financially.
Yeah.
There is a whole level of mental health that COVID has exposed. And I'm grieved for that, but I'm thankful that it's not just us. There's hundreds of ways that people can get help. People just assume, hey, I have $20,000 of debt. I'm going to be 90 when I pay that off. The truth is, a lot of people have paid inordinate amounts of interest, especially people that are getting into payday loans. And push has come to shove. And
you already paid your debts off.
Yeah,
and
many times
the interest
over.
means that you're just going to keep paying the debt that you already paid.
Yeah, so justice in Ontario, justice across Canada recognizes you have paid a lot and you have paid your debt many times over. We can negotiate things. If it's a choice between you killing yourself because of the weight of this debt, like, come on, that's not even an option.
No.
Don't do it.
No.
Like, get some help. And it doesn't have to be CAP Canada. I'm just saying we're one of many agencies, and they're just a click away on your smartphone or your computer to get some debt help. And again, our goal is to be across Canada in the next few years, and we are in a season of starting to expand our ministry as God permits with financial support and volunteers. But as you know, Kevin, that just doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while to build it.
Yeah.
But people can get help today.
Yeah.
That's the good news. And they can find their way out of debt. They can find their way out of depression and discouragement. And our partner office in the UK, they send us over every now and then news clippings of a man who kills himself, a mom who kills herself, or people that have self-harmed or OD'd because of, and it's directly linked to the
Marriages
financial
that
stuff.
fall apart.
Yeah. The fallout from it is so far-reaching. Broken homes, hurting people, dysfunction abounds, and a lot of times it's rooted in finance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tragic story, but I'm excited we can make a difference. Like, Kevin, I get up out of bed in the morning, think I get to do this. Like, I get to work with heroes every day. We do a little, again, Christian organization. We do a little 15 minutes of prayers in the morning. And at the end of prayers, I'll ask the staff, or whoever's leading devotions will ask the staff, what are we going to do today? And inevitably somebody will respond. It's a set response. We're not this spontaneous. What are we going to do today? Let's kick some poverty butt and tell the world about Jesus. And then the rest of the staff gets all. Because, Kevin, that's worth getting out of bed for.
That is.
And
that is.
I know there are haters that'll say, "Oh, that's just social gospel." Sorry, is that wrong? Like, is that a problem that we love people practically? Like, did we negate the parable of the Good Samaritan somewhere? Did Jesus say, "Forget about your neighbor, just love God. No,
Yeah.
it's the dual
Yeah.
command, right?
There is no antisocial gospel.
And there's no social media gospel.
Right.
Right. Wait, I don't know.
Well,
I'm just making stuff
maybe.
up now. I don't know what I'm saying.
That's what we're doing here.
Right.
Social media.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay. Retract. We can fix that in the mix, I think. Yeah. Just while we're on this fascinating topic, there's this story about Ananias and Sapphira.
Boom.
And they were giving, they had sold property. It seemed to be the thing that rich people in the early church were doing to help others. They would sell off what they didn't need so that others could be sustained and have their debts paid and be provided for. But they lied about the amount. And they claimed that all the money went to the church, but the truth was that they had kept a chunk back for themselves. So what was the real sin that they were committing there? Because the outcome wasn't so good for them. They get called out.
How'd that work out for
The
you?
apostles call them out, and boom, they drop dead.
Yeah, awkward.
That's awkward.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
And it doesn't seem to be something that happens very often. I don't know of that happening again, but I'm sure we'd hear about it if it was happening a lot. But what's the lesson for us there?
Wow, great question. Do you actually think about this stuff before you do the podcast? Like, you actually put thought into this?
No.
Like, you just came up with that
I
question?
just thought of that because I thought that'd be a good question to ask you.
Wow. Because Voltaire said you don't measure a man's intelligence by his answers, but by the questions he asks.
Oh.
See, I always knew you were a lot smarter than me, because how would I ever come up with a question? I mean, not only do I not know a good answer to that, I don't even know how to come up with a question like that. Like, I'm not even angry. I'm just thoroughly impressed. But in a feeble attempt to answer that question.
Well, that's all I want is just
sure.
you and your feebleness.
Yeah, I'm just, look at me, my eyes twitching. I consider, like, again, a big message of the gospel is don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And the Pharisees, again, to contextualize this in the broader gospel message, Pharisees, they stand up, they blow a horn, say, hey, look at me, I'm putting money in the offering. Yep. And
they bring out the giant check.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's the ostentatious, look at me, the showiness. That got called out on that occasion.
So what's wrong with that?
Like, the gospel isn't just about PR. I'm not saying there's no room for it, but it's about making Jesus look good a lot more than we look good. Yeah. And they lied to the Holy Spirit. And again, you can fool yourself, you can fool other people, and really, you can even, if you're really good, you can fool church people. But you can't fool God. You can't lie to the Holy Spirit. Like, does that make sense? Is that how you kind of?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. I think that you're right. It's that wanting to make a name for ourselves, wanting to be seen.
Yeah.
As, look at their virtue, look at how good they are. And you're right, the gospel speaks a lot to this private world of generosity, this quiet work that's very relational and somewhat confidential and effective. And it's almost like they were giving because it was something that would make them look good, but losing sight of why they were giving.
Exactly.
And who they were giving to.
Yeah. And it's, again, being the head of an organization that does this, I'm not here to blow my horn.
Yeah.
I'm just part of that organizational structure that helps the local church be
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
And then I tell the stories of what our heroes are doing on the front line.
Yeah.
And I don't hesitate to say to people, hey, give us money. We're helping individuals. We're helping churches reach
Yeah.
individuals. We're seeing people get free from the bondage of death, of debt. And once they get free from that, and hey, we can say, hey, now that you're journeying with us, you know why we do this. We just love God. We love Jesus. Can we introduce you to our friend? You don't want that? Okay, we're still going to love you.
Yeah.
Maybe down the road, someone else will have the privilege of sharing Jesus with them. And to us, we just want to love people. And I struggle with that, Kevin, to be honest. Like I don't want to be the guy that's boastful or bragging or wanting the people to think I'm doing such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I've never known you to be that way. I'd be shocked if you were, but
Yeah,
you know, I think that, you know, like before the pandemic shutdown, a reoccurring temptation for anybody that is serving in the church or serving in Christian ministries is that desire to, you know, be seen and to be known. You know, and it's I think in millennials and younger, that desire to build a platform is so it's such a driving force. And you know, I maybe something that I take from Ananias and Sapphira is, you know, they were building their platform, and what they should have been building was their altar.
Oh, wow.
You know, so that's maybe in the times that we're living through with everything being off kilter, and a lot of people are going to be coming to your organization and to our churches because of poverty. Let's not build a platform. Let's build an altar.
Beautiful.
Yeah, let's build that place that brings worship and glory to God. And man, we could do that all day long, couldn't we?
Yeah. What a beautiful
That's
thing.
what you were describing in your staff meeting there every morning at 15-minute devotion is, you know, we get to do this because this is worship to God.
Yeah.
This is life-changing, and this is loving the poor that are blessed by Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I go with a quick story right here?
Sure.
I'm thinking of a lady, I'll call her Sarah because this story's fresh and I had permission to share it, but just to be cool, I'm going to call her Sarah. And Sarah was going for an operation. She'd been getting out of debt for about a year, so halfway through her debt management plan, and she requested prayer because she was going for surgery. Not a believer, but knowing that her local church cares for her, said, please, would you pray for me? So I saw her name come up on the weekly prayer requests, and her debt coach, Rachel, sent us this email, and I said to Rachel, like, remember how I was talking earlier about things just stand out in your head? Well, I read Sarah's story, and I'm like, I'm going to pray for Sarah. This one's like it's got a highlighter on it. Pray for this lady. And I do my best to pray for everybody, but come on.
Yep. Sometimes they get highlighted.
Yeah. So this one stood out. So I prayed for Sarah, checked in later in the week. Hey, how's Sarah doing? She went for surgery on a Friday morning. This is just a few weeks back. And I woke up at 6 a.m. and I remembered, oh yeah, she's going for early morning surgery and 6 o'clock. So I prayed for Sarah, and I checked in with Rachel, her debt coach, and said, any word on Sarah yet? She said, no, not yet. But I said, well, please let her know we're praying for her. And it wasn't just me. Many people were praying for her. And that was Friday, and she did okay with her surgery. Sunday, she's in the hospital. She's laying on her back, looking up at the ceiling. No one there to talk to her. Can't have visitors because it's COVID. And she just decides to herself, she's, you know what? I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of being bitter.
Wow.
I'm tired of being unforgiving. And you know what? God, I don't even know how to pray, but I'm going to give you all this anger and bitterness and unforgiveness. I'm just going to give it all to you. And why don't you just come in? I'm inviting you to come into my life. Like, again, no organ music playing gently in the background, nobody with persuasive words right there. Right. She's just been loved on by the church, by Rachel and her team, who are taking out Mother's Day gift baskets and doing fresh baking and dropping that off to the clients. Like just loving people, just being real, and asking Sarah what she needs for a year and journeying with her. And that's enough. And Sarah just says, God, I want you in my life. And she gives her life to God because she's had an encounter with not people that are being showy, not people that are trying to build a platform, but people that are just loving and caring. And you get this because I remember, Kevin, when you stepped out to plant that church in Windsor, and I was, in the nice suburban church with our beautiful facility, and I'm thinking, oh, Kevin, he's finally gone insane. He's lost it.
Yes, I did. Yes, I am.
He's going into the heart of Drew Lard. Like, what's he doing? And
he's going to get beat up.
But I quickly realized, no, that's totally what Jesus would do. And the funny thing is, Kevin, I'd say our peers right across the board, everybody, very opinionated bunch, the ministers.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever heard a negative thing about you. You didn't go looking to build a reputation, but you just have a reputation of being a solid and a dependable guy who's gone into the inner city, loved people like crazy for decades. And you sense the smile of God on that. And people aren't like, oh, Kevin's this. I've never heard a bad word about you. You don't go looking, and this is the nature of the kingdom. You don't go looking to build a platform, but cool, you have one, and people respect your voice because you've just loved and served, and you haven't chosen to love the rich and famous. You've just chosen to love regular people. And that's why for me it's like it's easy. It's like, you know what? I got my kick at the can. I got to do, I got to travel all over. I got to do lots of fun stuff and preach here and there. And you know what? I maybe, I'm in my mid 50s now, got another decade of public ministry left. I just want to love people.
Yeah.
I want to do something. Not that the rest of the stuff didn't matter, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, this really matters. Like, this is my day job. And then my wife, we're fostering 3 kids. We got three under 3. We've had 4 kids. They're all older now, but between fostering and just being real, my job it's like, it doesn't get any better than this. Whether you're in the inner city or you're out in your suburbs, you can still love people in really practical ways.
Mark, I want to thank you so much for talking today and sharing everything that's in your heart for today. And as we sat and talked here, you know how it is that you, when you're remembering old stories and there's a missing detail, and it niggles at you until it appears. And I remember what it was. What was your mother's name?
Anne.
So I screwed up the punchline of the true story.
Here we go.
Okay, so you want so many cases of blue, and here's what she said. And what about Diet Blue?
Oh, Diet.
That's what it was. Diet Blue. Not Blue Light.
Diet Blue.
Diet Blue.
There you go.
There. Now we're back to the fact checking.
Yeah. That's
Sometimes
a much
you have to go into the deep archives.
Yeah.
But it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
Mark,
more
this
sense.
has been so much fun being with you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And
my privilege.
And looking forward to any other times the Lord gives us along the way to be together. Thank you.
Thanks, bro. Bless you, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Yeah, isn't it funny when you try to remember a punchline from many years ago and it takes you 45 minutes into an interview before you finally get it right? Well, anyways, that's part of me aging out, I guess. Getting details a little off at times. Anyways, on our next episode, dropping on January 15th, our guest is Paula Castrucci. And Paula is with Youth Unlimited in Toronto. In 2003, she was on an internship where she got to combine her love for two different populations into something that would become a real focus of life for her. And those two populations are youth groups and the urban poor. And so with Youth Unlimited, she's the lead on Project Serve Toronto, where she takes youth groups on a regular basis and brings them into missional experiences in the inner city, where they get to encounter just a real humanizing of what life in the city and life in poverty is like. And she's having a profound effect on many young lives. Well, at the Our City conference in Toronto in 2019, she was one of our guest speakers, and she had a session there called Single and Ready to Flamingo. And so we're going to hear that session on our next episode. And so please join us again. And I'm so glad that you've chosen to join us for season 2 of Sidewalk, Skyline podcast. And as we move forward into this year, let's take the angel's advice. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.